Hello everybody and welcome back to ZakIsCinema. Yes, welcome home everybody. If you're one of those people that are just dreading the holiday season because you know you're going to be forced at the family reunion to sit down and watch maybe, Home Alone, Elf again for the 5,000th time, and you'd much rather be sitting around a nice warm campfire talking about scary holiday movies, but nobody shares that level of appreciation like you do, so you have nobody to talk to about some of your favorite scary holiday movies. Well, buddy, this is the Christmas miracle I imagine you've been waiting for, because now we found each other to bask in the horror that is Christmas. Because today we're going to be reviewing and discussing the movie Silent Night, which came out in 2012. The movie follows a small-town cop trying to stop a mysterious killer dressed as Santa as he carves a bloody path through the community on Christmas Eve. Obviously, on the channel here, we have been covering the entire Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise right around for that holiday season movie discussion, but then we also got a new remake coming out in this franchise. So I guess I'm reviewing two remakes in a row because, guys, we have finally made it to the end of this franchise. We still have the new one, still got some rankings planned, but I'm very new to this franchise, so I thought it'd be perfect time with the new one coming out, holiday season right around the corner, to sit down and discuss this lovely franchise with all my beautiful viewers here. So let's jump into the review section, starting with the positives or just the things that I enjoyed most about this movie. Now, obviously, this is a remaking the original movie from, I believe, 1984, but it's not really remaking that original story. It's kind of just using the title. It's like a reimagining, more or less. And I appreciate how this remake didn't just repeat the same beats and story plot points the first one did. There's some nice homages, some nice references and Easter eggs for the fans, but, being a franchise that's 6 movies in, I appreciated how it felt very different and tried to do something different. It falls into the cliches of slashers, unfortunately, as we'll get into, but at least for the franchise here, it didn't just try to do the first one, which it easily could have. And I found myself kind of appreciating the much darker, much more serious tone. Not that the first one isn't serious, but I think with its more modern effects and storytelling, it feels just a little bit more real and gnarly. And obviously that has a lot to do with it being, modern, not as cheesy or campy as maybe the parts of the 80s one was. But I appreciate this kind of realistic fantasy kind of feel it has. It reminds me a lot of the Saw franchise, where it's so dark, grim, gnarly, and graphic, but it kind of has this fantastical edge to it where it never leaves reality, but you couldn't imagine somebody actually making all these jigsaw traps and working the way that they do. So it's like based in reality, but goes a little bit more fantastical, if that kind of makes sense. So I appreciate the tone that it was kind of going for and how dark and grim it really gets, especially with its gore. And I feel like it sets the tone pretty early on, where the very first scene is Santa getting dressed in his room like he's the Joker or something. He's putting on this creepy see-through clear plastic mask as he's dressing up in his Santa uniform. But then in the background, we have a visual of a tied-up girl, and then he leaves that girl in there and then goes to a guy that he has tied up somewhere else that is just basked in Christmas lights sitting in a metal chair, and he instantly starts electrocuting this guy to the point where his eyeballs burst. So, and it plays it very straight, very serious. So it kind of has that fun, fantastical nature with like the Christmas lights and the guy dressed as Santa, but it plays the gore stuff very, very serious and very, very horrifying if I was in a situation like that. So I just appreciated how the tone was thoroughly established as soon as the movie started. I knew exactly what I was going to get. And speaking of that, I appreciate that this movie does not hold back. It's definitely one of the more graphic slasher movies that I've seen that just isn't afraid to make anybody a victim here, where right after that kill scene with the dude in the chair, there's like another scene, I think, with the cops, and then it jumps back to the killer Santa, and we get this kind of funny-ish scene where it jumps to this random woman and her younger daughter, as the younger daughter is yelling at her mom, knocks her heart pill medications out of the mom's hand, and then starts berating and yelling at her to take her to the mall. So they have some like funny kind of moments with some over-the-top dynamics and characters, but then as soon as that happens, Santa comes to the door and the girl like references him as he's like a begging person from Salvation Army or something, and instantly asks Santa if he has anything for her. So it's just like the most miserable, insufferable kid there is. It's really showing the worst in our young youth today, I guess. And then I was so surprised when the Santa takes out this police taser and then starts tasing the girl and then stabs her to death. And it's shot in kind of a cool way. That sounds weird talking about a kid's death, but we get the kid's POV for a second and it stops like right at his face. So it's like this big, intimidating dude at this girl's doorstep, and we're kind of seeing it from her POV. So I thought that was a unique style choice. And it was just, I thought it would be maybe a cutaway kill or implied, but they really go for it. They really show it. So they really establish anybody could be killed in this movie. And I don't know if ZakIsCinema is the only one, but I kind of miss this era or age of movies and filmmaking where a lot of them almost had this blue tone, very cool blue vibes to the color palette, this cooler tone basking in the movie. It was at that time where I feel like it didn't go full digital, but they were not opposed to using film. So it's almost like that in-between kind of stage with that cool blue effect over it. I don't know. I enjoy how this movie looks. I feel like you get the same vibe from my videos here. I go for that cooler blue tone. So maybe it's just me, but I kind of like looking at the movie, if that makes sense. And I also thought the Santa costume and killer had a cool design where they easily could have just had another dude in a Santa costume and it would have been fine. But they do something a little different where he has this creepy plastic see-through mask that's also painted with makeup all over it. So you can see the guy's face, but you can't actually make out what he looks like. So I thought that was a cool way to do something different, show the killer's face, but still have it hidden in some way. And like I said, there's some pretty brutal things in here, and I like that it relied on a bit of a CGI, but also some practical stuff and kind of intertwined them so it looked very nice. Like I said, very brutal. There's a lot of torture scenes here, a lot of stabbing. There's one wood chipper scene that was just stuck in my head for the past couple days because I keep thinking about how brutal and gnarly that scene was. They're brutalizing kids, and it really just kind of ups the intensity and ups the suspense in the movie, and I feel like it kind of helps to make up for its lack of story and characters that we'll get into. I also enjoyed some of the homages that they were paying to the original. You know, of course, we get some sort of reimagining of the deer antler kill, but with this one, it's much more brutal, it's much more visceral with modern gore and effects, and like I said, I think they blend the practical and CGI very well, and I really like that scene there where of course you get the cool antler kill, but then he also does something different to the boyfriend where instead of in the original he pushes him out and he like lands on glass, which is pretty brutal and disturbing, but in this one he just axes the dude's head right in half, which I think really shows the strength and power this Santa is really going for in this one. And a huge positive for me here, where I was missing it in some of the other ones in this franchise, is this one really bleeds that Christmas vibe, which I think makes it perfect for watching it around this time of year. Like I said, that cool blue filter and color palette really help with that. I feel like everything feels really cold. It's all about the holiday. It takes place mostly on Christmas Eve, and I thought they did a really cool thing where the third act takes place at the police station, I believe, and their emergency lighting is green and red lights, so the whole third act is basking and bathing in this Christmas lighting, which I thought looked so cool. But yeah, let's jump into the mixed aspects for this movie. And just like with any slasher, there's always going to be just dumb characters and dumb character decisions. And, I feel like those don't often bother me too much. It almost just kind of feels more of an annoyance than like a negative for me, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm watching a movie. I'm not expecting realistic or reality. If I wanted that, I'd sit down and watch a documentary. So I hate when people nitpick that stuff, but I feel like a lot of it for me just ends up in that mixed where, yeah, I wish they chose something different, but whatever. For example, that wood chipper scene that leads to a great payoff, but it starts off with a group of characters in some sort of porn shoot or porn photo shoot kind of thing, and Santa comes in there, kills everybody else, and the one remaining girl goes running into this Christmas tree farm, which I thought was a cool setting for a chase scene like that. But she's hiding behind these trees, notices the Santa, notices the wood chipper, and then decides to sneak around and try to walk by the literal entrance to the wood chipper when she could have just kept running the opposite direction. Like, she went out of her way to walk back to the wood chipper. So, like, that's frustrating where it'd just be so easy to have her running. Santa comes out of nowhere and, like, decks her into the wood chipper. Like, it's a quick switch like that. So that one was just kind of annoying, if anything. And unfortunately, I feel like I'm going to have to put the main story plotline or the investigative side of the story in the mixed, where I know we're watching a slasher, we're not really here for the story, but this one felt very frustrating to me, where we have this Santa going around this small town, he's brutally killing people, and we're kind of waiting to see who it is. Why is he doing this? Are the killings connected? Is he just going around killing naughty people? However, the detective side, we're following this police force, which I thought was an interesting twist. Maybe there'd be a more mystery or investigative side, but they basically just kind of go around from kill scene to kill scene, talking about the aftermath, which we just saw on screen, so we know what happens, and they're just constantly playing catch up. And to me, the cop stuff almost came off as cheap and soap opera-y, if that makes sense. Like, it honestly kind of reminded me of a lot of the police stuff in Dexter New Blood, where it's a small town, so I get they don't have the resources like a major city, but this police force has 3, maybe 4 people if you include the secretary working in it. So everything just seems like it's not a big deal because it's only this police force working in it. And it just comes off as so unrealistic to have 2-3 people working in a police station, just like it did for Dexter New Blood. Like, I get that's a small town, but it seems like the stuff going on is not that big of a deal because there should be like reinforcements if we have a serial killer out on the loose, like the FBI or somebody else should be here. So just that part came off as cheap to me. And like I said, the investigative side came off as not a big deal since we're seeing this awful brutality. You think more people would get involved, but it's just like the main chief and then 2 detectives just kind of wandering around, so it just never feels as big of a deal as the characters are making it sound like. But yeah, let's jump into the negatives or the things that I just didn't really like about this movie. And unfortunately, a lot of the writing and acting and line delivery just kind of comes off as cheap and poorly acted and poorly written. It's nothing where it's intolerable or I felt like shutting the movie off, but it kind of borderlines on that kind of porno acting at some points. Not that I know what that acting is like, but if I did, I imagine it might resemble something like this. And you see it all over the place where you see them doing scenes and homages to, let's say, the grandpa scene from the original. We have somewhat of a grandpa scene in this one with an old grandpa that seems to come out of his dementia state to talk to a kid, and you could see how poorly acted and written it is, where it just comes off as so cringy and almost kind of unwatchable.
Gramps, holy shit, you're awake. Let me go get someone.
You see Santa Claus tonight, boy, you better run. Run for your life.
There's also this scene where it was kind of hard to sit through with this pastor, where there's our main cop person and another old lady sitting in the church, and this pastor is going on like a rant about sin, bringing up American Idol for some reason right before Santa comes in and kills the pastor. Like,
sin is the beating heart of Christmas. Pain and war, fear and sickness, death and famine, American Idol and internet pornography.
it was coming off as so overly serious at some points, but the writing and acting couldn't come up with it, so I couldn't tell if they were going for camp or if it was just a mistake, and it just kind of came off like that. I appreciate its serious tone. It was in my positives for a reason, but sometimes I couldn't help myself but kind of thinking that the movie shouldn't have taken itself so serious with having pretty over-the-top and cringy writing, and there's just so many examples of that. Like, at one point they find a Santa who they think is the killer, and then he is talking to our main detective lady, I believe named Aubrey, in his jail cell, and he is going on a rant about trying to deconstruct society, holidays, but he just kind of sounds like a post on r/I'm 14 and this is deep, where
Ring ring, it's a telemarketer. Give me money for Haiti or the Democrats or National Suck My Dick Week. It's the most wonderful fucking time of the year.
like I said, I couldn't tell if they were kind of going for that cheesiness factor or if they really thought they were cooking with some of these lines and writing here. And unfortunately, I feel like that takes away from the intensity and the seriousness of what the Santa's doing, because when we're seeing the Santa, we're like, this shit is fucked up. He's really going for it here. Who's going to stop these people? But then when you get to the cop side, that same acting and writing just doesn't live up to what we're seeing there, so you can't take it too serious. And there's one example with Aubrey confronting this in the park rogue Santa Claus that is going off script and telling kids like reality, like why their parents divorced and why Santa's not real, talking to them about sex. And
presents aren't under the tree tomorrow. You know what happened, right? Well, see, your parents took them and they put them on eBay. That's right. Never trust your parents.
Weird shit like that. And the Santa attempts to intimidate Aubrey by saying, shouldn't you be at home with your husband by the fire? And Aubrey like kind of stares him down, and then there's this big swelling intense music playing as she stares at the character and is like, what did you just say to me? And like,
So how come you're not at home tonight by the fire with your hubby baking cookies?
What did you just say?
again, I couldn't tell. I'm like, okay, do we know this is kind of stupid or do we think we're serious? So I think they never really established that, and I have to lean with they were trying to be serious, but that stuff just doesn't make me feel anything. And the best way I can kind of describe it is all the characters almost kind of feel like they're written to be like an 80s high school movie with high school students and high school bullies, but they're written in that over-the-top kind of campy way, but they're being portrayed very serious by adult actors. So it just kind of comes off as a bit silly, even though I don't think that's what they were going for. And I felt like it was a pretty big missed opportunity to not have this movie as a whodunit slasher in this small town trying to celebrate Christmas. I feel like that was a bit of a missed opportunity, but they kind of play it like a whodunit, even though they don't really give us any suspects, because it chooses to focus on the small police force, those three characters, and then the Santa killer, and then all the other surrounding victims that we just see Santa brutalize. So there's no suspects, there's nobody to have fun with guessing or a bunch of red herrings. So I thought that was a pretty big missed opportunity, especially kind of playing out as this mysterious kind of movie. And I feel like a lot of this would have been fixed if maybe our main character in Aubrey was a little bit more interesting. I think she's given it her all with what she had written for her, but she isn't like annoying. She's just kind of pretty bland and forgettable. The only characterization we really get is that her husband died a year ago around the holidays, and we don't even get a flashback scene with them. We don't really get established on their relationship or who the husband was. There's not much to her personality to really make it interesting. So we never know Aubrey before her husband died, then see her after. We're just seeing the after, so it's kind of hard to care about the before. And again, a lot of this could have been saved, even though it's playing as a whodunit, but not really a whodunit. If the reveal was somehow very interesting and tied everything together, I think this would be a pretty strong movie, but it's pretty generic, pretty weak, and leaves off on a dud here, where we find out this killer, his name is Ronald. We don't really know who Ronald is, but we find out years later that Ronald's father dressed as a Santa Claus and was a part of a standoff where police were trying to apprehend and arrest a criminal in a Santa suit, and during the chaos he pulls out a flamethrower to defend himself, and then the police shoot him because they still think he's the suspect, even though you probably shouldn't be walking around with a flamethrower. I think you deserve to be arrested if you do that. But then we see a flashback that young Ronald here witnessed the entire thing and set him up to be traumatized and go forth with being this killer Santa. But it leaves off on a huge dud where that was the only motivation, and we really had zero connection or really showed the significance of his father, really spent time with Ronald in any way, so we don't really care about the situation. We just kind of find out after the movie kind of closes out, and it's like its last little reveal. But when they showed me that, I'm like, okay, so, a traumatized boy, but we never really got to see the trauma or reason to care, and it's just so frustrating because the original did it so well where we were there with the characters, we experienced that trauma with him, saw him grow up, see how it impacted him, and which led him on the journey. But it's like they remade the first one but never showed you the opening scene or anything at the orphanage, but then showed you that in a quick 30-second flashback as soon as the movie was wrapping up. You'd be like, well, I don't give a fuck about that. Why would I care? It doesn't make any sense. And it's not even a reveal, as more of just giving us context as to why he did what he did, but we don't care from the start. So pretty disappointing there, pretty rough at the end. Because I would say overall, this is unfortunately just a forgettable movie that I think had flashes and glimpses of what it really could have been with its intense gore, visceral, violent nature this movie really had going for it. However, the story, characters, and the end reveal just kind of make it bland and forgettable, unfortunately. So for my rating for this movie is, I think this is a perfect streaming movie where I wouldn't even really recommend paying a couple bucks to rent it on Amazon Prime, but if you're paying for a service, it's already on there. It might be worth checking out. There's some good kills, some good gore in there, and it's a pretty easy watch, pretty easy 90 minutes overall here. So that's about it. Guys, we have finished the franchise review series. We just got the new one right around the corner, and then look out for some ranking videos here. But please let me know what you think of the 2012 movie Silent Night. Did you even know this was a movie? Did you know the remake coming out is the second remake to do this somewhat recently? So let me know if you've seen this. Let me know if you like it a little bit more, hate it a bit more. Do you think they should have revisited this one, made some more sequels? I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings on this 2012 movie here. But that's about it. I appreciate anybody watching my videos, so thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.